Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, we're talking about a win. The Dukes bounce back, the playoff back on the table, Sunbelt Championship back on the table. Everything's back.
In fairness, it was never gone. However, I think it's a little aggressive to say the college football playoff is back. That's just me. But the Sunbelt East and the Sunbelt title was never off the table, Bennett. What are you talking about?
That's true. Everything was on the table. We had a very frank discussion about how everything was still on the table last week.
Well, I don't think the college football I'm going to stand by my in the moment post loss in a haze tweet of saying like the college football playoff hopes are gone. I still stand by that. Like there's so much
playoff team. Yeah.
There's so much like, yes, in theory they still have a chance, but they need so many things to like go right for them.
With a lot of things.
Like Boise needs to lose probably twice.
Yeah, they would, like, if Boise wins the Mountain West.
Like you're preying on an Ashton Genty injury because it's the only way Boise loses at this point. Army and Navy, it feels un-American to root against them at this point.
They're cooking. Tulane's lurking.
UNLV's also like there.
Yeah. You still have to actually win the Sunbelt Championship.
Not only that, you have to win out and win the Sunbelt Championship. Like you have to win every single game on the schedule, plus the one that isn't on the schedule technically yet.
Which we don't know if that'll be a home or road if it gets to that point. There's a lot of steps left. So we'll pump the brakes on playoff, but
championship is still very much right there. And this game, not to bury the lead here, the game this weekend is so huge for that. But before we get to talking about the Georgia Southern game, we have to talk about the Coastal Carolina beatdown. And we have to let you guys know that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, live odds, and spreads to bet on during the games. Largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA. Bennett, did you know they have political props as well? When the game's over, head on over to our online casino. I love political betting. It's so stupid. I remember, was it the Biden-Trump election where like we all went to bed and Trump was like minus 1,000 to win and we woke up and it was like, you don't have any inside information. You're purely changing odds based on money. Like there's no knowledge behind this. If you're betting political props, call the number. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And where this podcast is starting on this Wednesday is, of course, JMU's. Maybe the score doesn't show how dominant this game it was, like a 39-7 win for JMU, where they utterly dominated, used a 22-point second quarter. Alonzo Barnett threw for only 191, but I think combined for 4 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 1 on the ground. He looked really good outside of his fumble on the very first drive, but did an excellent job of bouncing back from that. The Dukes were led by George Pettaway, who had, I believe, a career-high 89 rushing yards. Wayne Knight got in there, averaging some good touches. Tyler Purdy was the prototype of consistency. I think he's going to finish the year averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Not a tick more, not a tick less, but he's going to do exactly what is expected out of him, and he's going to fall forward and get positive yards no matter what. JC Evans, we saw a package for him. It was JC run right, JC run left, JC run right. I mean, overall, the running game dominated Coastal. What did you see? Kind of preliminary thoughts out of this win over Coastal Carolina?
I feel like the UNC game threw off. UNC and Ball State threw off like how we viewed the team, and they almost got this identity of like, oh, they're an offensive juggernaut. When in reality, they're more like a defensive great mug, a defensive and like special teams juggernaut. And like an okay offense that's kind of inconsistent but explosive. Like the offense, I thought, did not play that well, but they still scored 32. And then the defense had a touchdown in this one. Lloyd Summerall's pick 6. So it was like fine offensively. It wasn't bad by any means, but it also wasn't like crazy great or consistent throughout the game. But the defense has been unbelievable. I think, outside of the UNC game where the team gave up 50, which I think part of that is just how the game went. They were okay giving up some points as long as they maintained the lead. But like Charlotte, they gave up 7, Gardner-Webb 6, Ball State 7, ULM, they end up giving up 21, but one of those is a defensive score, and then Coastal Carolina 7. They've been phenomenal against Group of 5 and FCS teams defensively. And that to me is kind of the story. Is I think there were questions coming into the year like, oh, they lost so much on the defensive line. They lost their star linebackers. How are they going to do defensively? And the answer was like maybe be the best defense in the Sun Belt.
Call me crazy. I think this team defensively is better than last year's team. I think the defensive line was better for last year's JMU team, but I think the defense as a whole this year is better than JMU's 2023 defense. And I think that shows through turnovers. I think it shows through the way they're able to stop the pass. And I think it shows through the way that they're able to stop the run on a consistent basis without having to sell out to stop the run like past years did.
Yeah, they're really good. They've got a bunch of really talented players that are performing well. I think like the entire team might be better than last year's team, which is crazy to say, but I love some of the transfer additions and how they're playing. I think they've done a much better job of developing some of the younger talent that they actually want to use now, where I feel like Signetti sometimes would have his starting group and like some backups, and like that those were the guys, and they were kind of pushing ahead with them. And then if you had an injury or something, the drop off was pretty significant. Where I feel like this group has built up more depth through recruiting, the portal, and then also I think player development. Not that Signetti did anything poorly, right? He's got Indiana cruising, and you'll see them in person this weekend. They're very, very
so
good
for that.
Yeah.
Nebraska's going to win. Nebraska's going to win the game.
But Chesney's cooking. I'm impressed with what he's done so far.
It's been really fun to watch this season. You mentioned the offense being kind of this explosive, reliant team, and I think we saw that against the Charlotte game, which that may have been the game that is most like true to what this team is. Good defense. They hit on a few explosive plays. They were wildly inconsistent. I think they fixed that a little bit where they're not as inconsistent as they were in the Charlotte game, but they still are inconsistent. That first half to second half difference is quite the contrast, because in the first half, they converted over 50% of their third downs. They averaged 7.2 yards per play. They were gashing Coastal Carolina nearly every single time they ran it or they passed it. In the second half, they only had 156 yards, only scored 10 points, 29% on third down, and they averaged just 4.7 yards per play. The consistent thread through all of that is the defense played lights out and just held Coastal's offense to nothing. In the first half, the defense held Coastal to 4.9 yards per play, but that is only because of that busted coverage touchdown that they allowed. And if you're giving up one of those a game, that's something you can live with. Held them to under 2 yards per play in the second half. The reason JMU, I think's offense was able to produce 29 points in the first half was because they hit on some explosive plays.
Yeah, they hit some explosives, and I thought maybe they took the foot off the gas a little bit in the second half.
Yeah.
They're just slightly like inconsistent at times. I think the deep ball too for Barnett, and you talked about it with Delvin on to the house, has been a little bit off the last couple of weeks. So interested to see if they can dial that back in.
I think that's more so variance. Like the deep ball is just a hard, like even if you are a deep ball merchant, and I wanted to say this onto the house, I didn't get to, it kind of reminds me of how Russell Wilson used to play, where like good in the pocket, can avoid pressure, and then has just one of the best deep balls in the league. Russell Wilson, arguably the best deep ball thrower in NFL history, but that's besides the point. Alonzo Barnett, arguably the best deep ball thrower, albeit early in his career, of JMU football history. I just think sometimes that's it's such a difficult play, and he made it look so easy the first few weeks, where I think there's going to be some road bumps when you're passing it 40 air yards down the field. Like sometimes it's just not there. You need everything to break perfectly for you. It's still nearly there, and I'm very confident that they'll be able to reel it back in and they'll start hitting them again. But I think it might be a little crazy to assume that Barnett was averaging like 17 air yards per pass through the first like 4 weeks of the season. Little crazy to just think that that's going to be the rest of the season. Unless you're Blake Horvath, you're not going to finish the year with like a 12 plus ADOT.
That's fair. He has had a few though where like he'll overthrow a guy that doesn't have anyone within 10 yards of him. It's like maybe we go the other way on that and we underthrow that ball.
You're right. I'm just like, it is hard to drop it in the
Yes,
bucket 40
yes, yes,
yards down the field like all season. And
yes.
we're picking nits here. You won 39-7. Like, good job. You didn't need to hit the explosive plays. Now, if they lost this game by like 4 points, like the ULM game, you can be like, all right, brother, we need you to hit those in the big time moments. But in a 39-7 win, it's just like, that would have been cool. And we're saying this where maybe I've come around and I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit more. JMU still scored 22 points in the second quarter. Their defense and special teams combined to outscore Coastal Carolina in this game. They didn't need any offense whatsoever because Lloyd Summerall's pick six. You could argue then the Taylor Thompson jump pass to Josh Pfeiffer in the end zone right there. You got 8 points and you just outscored Coastal Carolina. But I mean, they're still hitting the explosive plays. They're still doing it. And like they're getting theirs. Maybe they're not getting 4 explosives a game. They're getting 1 or 2. But the way the defense is playing, you may only need 1 per game as this season rolls along.
Yeah, they had 420 yards, so it was not
Yeah.
like a bad offensive performance. It was just crazy that there are so many plays that I feel like they left out there. Like the first drive when Barnett fumbles. If he doesn't fumble, that drive's a touchdown. Like they were cruising over them.
I mean, it felt like the entire, and I think the second half could just be best described as them taking their foot off the gas. And
I think there was some of that, yeah.
maybe not even like mentally, but Dean Kennedy may have been like, all right, we're not going to, show a flea flicker up 39-7 here in the fourth quarter. Like, I think in the fourth quarter, they trotted out a mixture of JC Evans, Billy Atkins. Ooh, that was a nice voice crack. Billy Atkins and Blake Kendall. And so like in the fourth quarter, you've pretty much been like, all right, this game's over.
Yeah, I mean, it was over for a while, right? I think the broadcast was talking about
the
it
whole
crazy.
second half. And like they started talking about it in the third quarter. If you didn't if you didn't listen to the second half of this game, I highly recommend just like finding a 5-minute interval in the fourth quarter and just listening to what they're talking about because it's everything but the game. But I mean, there was a point in the third quarter they're talking about, I think, skydiving when it was a point in the game where, granted, Coastal's offense was doing nothing, but we saw what happened on Saturday. Georgia Southern overcame a 23-3 deficit in the fourth quarter to win. All Coastal needed to do was like score a touchdown, get a stop, and they were right back into the game.
Yeah, it was one that like it just felt over for a long, long time. And again, like we're talking picking some nits with the offense. The defense was unbelievable. Like Ethan Vasco came into the game playing pretty well. I don't know if you saw the start of the broadcast or not. They did a Sports Center hit with Ethan Vasco like before kickoff, and they're asking him, they're like, college football playoff is like, you guys keep winning, that could be on the table for you. How do you block out that noise? First of all, what? No, it was never on the table for them.
Also love that. How do you block out the noise? As we are the noise directly in your ear pregame. So some people are saying college football playoff. We are one of them. How do you shut up? How do you block us out as we are in your AirPods right now pregame?
I feel like it took them by surprise though, because nobody has floated Coastal as a playoff contender, and we kind of saw why in this game. But Vasco had been playing well. This was a game I thought had a chance to be competitive. It was not. He goes 5 of 18 for 84 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Like they really threw him out of his rhythm. He had by far his worst game of the season. I mean, 5 of 18 is really, really bad. I mean, he struggled, couldn't really get anything going. They pressured him, even though they didn't create a bunch of sacks or anything, but they got pressure, forced interceptions. He just looked totally off. They could do absolutely nothing offensively. So yeah, the offense needs to get better, whatever, could improve in some certain areas. But if you're putting up 420 yards, you're scoring 30 plus points, and you have a defense that is playing the way this one is, yeah, you should win a lot of games if you're JMU. You should have a chance realistically to win out.
He started the game 4 for 5 with a touchdown. In the second quarter, he went 1 for 10 with an interception. In the third quarter, he went 3 for 7 with an interception. In the fourth quarter, he went 1 for 4, no touchdowns, no interceptions.
And some of that was Kim, the backup, who came in and did okay. He was 4 of 7, but 4 of 7 for 18 yards. What is that? Like, it's like just over, it's like 2.5 yards per pass attempt.
Good math.
I mean, they couldn't do anything.
Man, if I didn't know better, I thought you majored in math.
What's
I guess
that?
you kind of did. I said if I didn't know better, you
Oh.
majored in math, but I guess you could have did it.
No, I was I was like, my math skills, no, definitely not me. But 9 for 26 at the quarterbacks combined for them, 9 for 26, 102 yards. It's like 4 yards per attempt. I mean, that's just brutally awful.
It was such a fun game. That let's talk about the defense really quick because the offense, it is what it is. It's going to be an explosive, reliant offense that is extremely fun to watch. Like when they're hitting, it's hitting. George Pettaway is very good. Uh, Wayne Knight is explosive. Wayne Knight, I would love to see. Like
Yeah.
it feels like every time he touches the ball, it's a first down. Um, he's fun. Tyler Purdy, he's gonna get your 4.5 yards each and every time. Like he has an insane knack of picking up 4 yards a carry. Like I've never seen a running back like it. But the defense, Lloyd Summerall pick 6. They
That
shut
was
down
sweet.
Vasco, like you said. Terrence Spence gets his 4th interception of the game off of a tip from KJ Flo, the
Mhm.
freshman from Charlotte, North Carolina, that we had on the podcast on when he signed his NLI. That defensive performance was amazing.
It was so good. Spence keeps getting interceptions. Like you said, I thought the linebackers are growing into their own a bit. Jacob Dobbs led the team with 9 tackles. You mentioned this with Delvin too, where he hasn't made a ton of flashy plays this year. I think he only has like 1.5 tackles for loss, which is a little different than his Holy Cross career. But he's always like there making tackles when they come to him, which has been solid and helpful. I thought he had a few in this game where it's like if he misses it, it's a first down, and he didn't miss it. So that
He
was good.
Yeah, I don't think he's really asked to attack the line of scrimmage all that often.
No.
He seems like he's very much like the middle linebacker. He's not, blitzing at a high rate. He's not trying to get the TFLs at a high rate. He makes a mistake here and there. Sometimes he goes into the wrong hole, and that's when kind of those big runs get busted off. But for the most part, he leads the team nearly 50 tackles already this season. He's just doing what's asked of him. I mean, he just puts his head down and plays football and gets tackles.
Yeah, I mean, he's been solid. And then there's other guys that like, I mean, Eric O'Neill's the one that really continues to stand out for me. And I hope his like season long
Bias.
stats start to pop slightly more. Cause like his PFF grade, he's like one of the 10 best defensive ends like in the FBS. He doesn't have like eye popping sack totals or anything, but like never loses a battle with an offensive lineman. Like he
He
almost always wins his one on one.
3 tackles, a half a tackle for loss, 3 QB hits. He's getting to the quarterback. He's
Yeah.
impacting the plays.
Yeah, he's been awesome. And then I think the other guy that hasn't gotten talked about at all by like fans or media or anyone who has maybe been like one of the most steady players, Chris
Can I
Sheeran.
guess? Oh,
Oh,
damn
sorry, I broke.
it.
I should have like guessed. But were you going to guess Chris Sheeran?
I was going to guess Kyrie Mans.
Mans has been really good. I feel like Mans has gotten maybe a little bit more love, but you're right. He's kind of flown under the radar too. Sheeran's so good. Like he doesn't mess things up. He always makes tackles when he has the chance to do it. He's good in coverage. Like they brought him in, UConn transfer, who had like no buzz in the spring. And he's had like no buzz this year. He's one of their highest graded players on PFF like every week. He's just been so steady and phenomenal. And I feel like we're still getting, we're getting like talk about Taji Hudson and how he had one catch. It's like it's good, and Taji's like working in the offense or whatever. Like Chris Sheeran has been balling out for the whole season. Like I love him to get some media availability or something because the guy's just been fantastic.
He started his career at Missouri, so he's definitely flashing his SEC type of ability. Plays a couple years at UConn, now at JMU, second on the team in total tackles, and yeah, kind of like Jacob Dobbs. Not a ton of flashy stats, but is
Mhm.
going to just get the job done, do the right thing, and playing in a secondary that for a little bit of time had kind of struggled to have just consistent
Yes.
good play. It's so nice to see. Like Chauncey made his return in this game as well, was kind of rotating drives. Don't think he played the first drive, then he was playing, didn't have a full workload. So interested to see kind of how he plays into it as it goes on. But having Chauncey back alongside, whether it's Terrence Spence, Eaglin, Taylor, Antoine Booth, whoever it is on the other side of the field, and then the 2 safeties back there have been extremely reliable with DJ Barksdale as this kind of rover-esque player.
Yeah, it's the secondary's playing so much better than last year. Like they make plays on the ball. They get in passing lanes. I think that was the thing that bothered me last year is sometimes they would maybe be in position and just weren't good tracking the ball. I feel like the way they're coaching that this year must be drastically different because they're a lot better at it. They keep forcing turnovers. They seem like they're improving every week with tackling. Defensive line's been pretty solid. Like very fun to see Summerall flash, right? Because he hasn't done a ton, but his athleticism's there. The pick six was awesome. Just the defense is sick.
I mean, Summerall just at times you see him just dominate 1v1. And
Yes.
it feels like it's starting to come together now. Same with Eric O'Neill. Like if you have Lloyd Summerall on one side and Eric O'Neill on the other, as you go into the teeth of Sunbelt play, that's going to be huge. And when they travel down to Statesboro, Georgia, they're going to need both of them to play a very good game against either JC French or Dexter Williams back there for Georgia Southern. You like that segue?
Biggest game of the year.
You like that segue, though?
Yeah,
that was
great.
A good segue. Thank you.
I was going to let you just bask in it naturally, but
you know what they say about podcasting. You know what they say about podcasting. Rule number one: when you have a perfect segue, you have to ruin the rhythm that you created.
Call it out,
you have to end all of the positive momentum you had going to then call it out.
But this is sweet. Like I was writing about this for JMUSportsNews.com plug. But this is kind of the game, like the type of game that JMU left the CAA for and joined the Sun Belt, right? Like it's a program in Georgia Southern that has 6 FCS national titles. They've been to 6 bowl games at the FBS level. Their head coach used to be the head coach at USC and won a Rose Bowl there. Pretty cool. Like this is really cool. You're going on the road. It's on a streaming service that isn't dog water, right? With ESPN Plus instead of Flow Sports. Like everything about this, just a couple years after watching this team on Flow and watching them play like Towson, where there's biased announcers and the biased announcers are somehow trying to like work their bias in despite their team being down like 42-3. This is cool. This is better. It's awesome. Georgia Southern's got a nice, fun, solid team with a good road environment. If you win this game, you're in the driver's seat in the East. If you lose it, I don't think you have any chance of winning the East, which is kind of cool.
You would need a lot of things to break right for you because if you lose this game, it's essentially losing 2 games on Georgia Southern. If you win, you have the head-to-head and you're number 1 in the East. If you lose, you're 3 games behind Georgia Southern.
Yeah, Georgia Southern's 2-0 in conference play. So you lose this one, they would be 3-0, you would be 1-2. You mentioned that 2-game deficit plus the head-to-head. Georgia Southern only has 5 conference games left after that. So you need them to go like 2-3, and then you got to win out. So it's going to be very tough, and I'm not sure that it would quite break the Duke's way. Where if you win it, like they're the obvious favorite to win the East.
And this is a place where JMU's never won. This is going to be their 6th trip to Statesboro. Yes. They're 0-5 down there. It's a tough place to play. It's a tough place to get to. It's not friendly to road teams. And Georgia Southern is a very good offensive football team. Georgia Southern is going to give JMU some fits defensively. They're going to see things that Lyle Hemphill defense has not seen this season. And that's saying a lot because they played Mac Brown's UNC earlier this season. But I'm a little worried for this game. JC French got banged up last game, thought it was a concussion, wasn't put in concussion protocol.
That was confusing, but yes.
So he's available to play, and Clay Helton said he is the quarterback 1. Despite Dexter Williams leading an all-time great comeback against Marshall.
I know.
Some Georgia Southern fans are a little perplexed by that, but Clay Helton earlier this week said something along the lines of, you can't lose your job because of an injury. Wally Pipp would disagree. Drew Bledsoe would disagree. Countless other football players would disagree with that sentiment. All that being said, JC French is still a very good quarterback. JC French has some wheels. JC French is a dual threat. He won this QB battle pretty early on in fall camp.
He did,
despite a lot of Georgia Southern fans thinking that he was going to be potentially quarterback 3 on this depth chart.
I like both guys. I think either quarterback could come in and play pretty well. French has some nice ability, his flash at times. I think he had over 300 passing yards against Boise State. They threw it a lot in that game, but they've got
they always throw it a lot.
They love to throw it a lot. But their running backs are kind of nice. They've got OJ Arnold and Jalen White, who are both pretty good, even though their stats aren't crazy this year. I feel like maybe they could get that going at some point. They've also got Burgess on the outside, like Caleb Hood, their tight end Fromm is good. They have a lot of weapons and they do a lot of interesting things schematically. And then I actually think their defense is kind of underrated. They're pretty good at forcing turnovers. They got absolutely cooked by Boise State and Ole Miss, which I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass for. They're giving up like 100 fewer yards per game in conference play compared to non-conference play. It's not an elite defense by any means. Like JMU can score in this. They can put up yards. They can do all those things. I do think it's a better defense than showed up against like Boise and Ole Miss. And I don't think JMU's offense is in the Boise Ole Miss category.
Well, they're granted against their run numbers are a little inflated because they did play Ashton Genty. I understand. I won't even talk about the defense for right now. We'll get into that in a little bit because you and I disagree a little bit on it. Their special teams aren't very good. That's their like biggest weak spot. This is a team defensively. They have to have their opponents are starting on their own 33-yard line, which is 132nd in the nation. So that tells me your kickoff team isn't having great coverage. You're allowing good run backs. Your punt return teams aren't doing great because they're allowing big run backs and or you're punting a lot deep inside your own territory, which then sets up the opponent with good field position. JMU's special teams, while it has struggled at times in coverage, they've done very well returning the ball, whether it's George Pettaway on kickoffs or Ymir Knight on punt returns. I believe this is a game that, look, I'll play along with you for right now. Their defense is actually underrated. Sure, whatever. I'll play along with that. Their special teams will then come into play. And if they're allowing teams to start on their own 33, I think that sets up well for a JMU offense that relies on, 50-yard explosives.
I think JMU should win. Like the Duke should win this game. I do think it's tough, the environment. I think Georgia Southern, I think they're probably the second best team in the East.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Clay Helton, I feel like every preseason we sleep on Georgia Southern, and then like we all watch Clay Helton's offense collectively and we go, oh, that's right. Yeah, he's like a P5 head coach who won a Rose Bowl and like knows offense.
The crazy part too is that he's like he might be like closer to hot seat than he is to like getting another P4 job, which is fascinating because what did they like last year? They might have lost like their last 5 or something.
Their quarterback was horrible. Like Clay Helton is only as good as his quarterback, and you saw that with Kyle Van Treese, who was like a potential Sun Belt Player of the Year type of player. He leaves. They bring in
Davis Brin.
Yeah. I was going to say Davis Bryce. Davis Brin, who like starts fine and then like the wheels just fall off after the JMU game. And some are saying that's the JMU effect. And then they just never really found their rhythm for the rest of the season. But now it seems like JC French can run a Clay Helton offense.
Yeah, I mean they're an interesting one because last year they lost the JMU game and then bounced back with a couple home wins and then lost 5 in a row. So they were 6-2 and they go 6-7. I think fans are getting ticked that they're not like consistently contending for the East. I think there would have been a lot of Clay Helton hate if they don't put up that absurd comeback against Marshall, but they do. So then all of the hot seat stuff gets thrown to Charles Huff, who was like scorching hot seat. Like he was hotter than Clay Helton was at any point.
He's hotter than Satan in Hades.
He's going to have a hard time keeping his job going into next year at Marshall. But now, like, Georgia Southern goes from, like, why is this happening? Why did we lose to Marshall? What a bummer. Our quarterback's hurt to, like, oh, my God, we did this. And now we have a home game against JMU to, like, take control of the East. So it's a crazy emotional flip for them. This game is massive for both sides. I think JMU's the better football team, but I also think JMU's a better football team than ULM. And they shot themselves in the foot 100 times. Like, Georgia Southern's a team, if you're going to have 8 pre-snap penalties or whatever, and you're going to make sloppy plays on offense, and your defense is going to give up the occasional chunk play, like you're going to lose. So you got to come out and play well.
Can I go on a really quick side tangent before coming back to this game? The life of a G5 coach is hilarious because Charles Huff, 2 years ago, was being floated as like a trendy P5, like keep an eye on what's happening in Marshall. He's going to be a guy that's going to go P4 in the next year or two. and now he
Mhm.
may not even be a coordinator at the G5 level at this time next year. Clay Helton, who's like, oh, he's going to Georgia Southern to resurrect his career and he'll be P4 in 4 years. He's now like teetering on hot seat to cold seat back and forth. Will Healy with Charlotte, they beat Duke in like
Yeah.
2021. And now I think he's like the special assistant to Gus Malzahn at UCF or something like that. The life of a G5 coach. Strike while the iron's hot. Like, do not wait. If you are being like, go P5, go immediately, because in 2 years it's not going to be the same.
It's really, really hard to like maintain any of this. And it's, I don't know, it speaks a lot, I guess, to what JMU's been able to do in between coaches
Yeah.
and Chesney coming in and has them cooking. But this is a big one. This is a big one for Chesney and company because I think there's an expectation or a feeling at least that JMU is the best team in the East and probably the best team in the Sun Belt. So if you drop one to ULM, you drop one to Georgia Southern when you think you're a better team than both, it starts to get a little bit maybe frustrating for fans, especially because this feels like a year that JMU should at the very least be playing for the conference championship because Marshall is down. App is way the F down. Georgia Southern seems like they're kind of fine. ODU is like scrappy, but like not frightening, but like scrappy. Georgia State's down because they're in a pretty significant rebuild,
Georgia
even though
State's down every year.
even they had a couple 9-win years.
Yeah, they stacked their non-conference favorably. Like, I was a big Georgia State lover going into last season, and then they just ruined me. So I hate Georgia State.
And then Coastal's, JMU owns them. So it feels like a time like, yeah, this is a great year to win the East because in theory, the teams that really should be contending for it, which are probably like App, Marshall, JMU, Georgia Southern, 3 of those 4 are down. Like this should be JMU's year. So this is a big one because if you if you lose it, it's gonna feel like a huge missed opportunity Saturday.
And it's a defense that allows big plays, like Georgia
Yeah.
Southern's defense. So they're 90th in the nation in success rate, which means against the pass, which tells you you're not necessarily, I guess I should give the full picture and then do the explanation. So their success rate is 90th in the nation. They allow a successful play on 42.7% of all pass plays, but their EPA allowed per play is 104th in the nation at 0.08. So with it's not a huge disparity, but that type of disparity tells you that, okay, they're not allowing teams to kind of, gain 5, gain 10, and like dink and dunk their way down the field and get successful play after successful play after successful play. But then when you look at that EPA number with that disparity, that's telling you they're allowing the chunk plays. So they may stop you on first and second down, but on 3rd and 10, they'll allow the 30-yard pass for first down. Or on first down, they'll allow the 50-yard touchdown, where that's only one successful play, but it's a big EPA boost. So this tells me that against the pass, Georgia Southern can allow the big plays, which plays perfectly into JMU's hand. And when you're looking at it only against the pass, it takes away the Ashton Genty effect, which I think could skew some of their overall defensive numbers for Georgia Southern because they played Ashton Genty, although their passing numbers may be skewed because they played Jackson Dart and Ole Miss. So take it with a grain of salt. But I also will say on this long soapbox diatribe here that I'm going on, JMU did also play UNC and Ball State, which is inflating some of their numbers, deflating some of their numbers. They had their ULM game. So on the whole, I think JMU matches up really well against a Georgia Southern defense that I'm not going to say is underrated. I think their Georgia Southern defense is bad.
I'm not quite there because I think they're capable. I like some of their individual players. Watson Trent, the linebacker, I like, leads them in tackles, has 4 forced fumbles. They're opportunistic, I think. They're trying to do a little bit of what JMU does with the turnover stuff. They're just not as good at it. I do think though, like ULM impressed me with the fact that they kind of seemed like dogs. Where like they were kind of hitting hard. Like they had a lot of physicality. I thought they were decent in the trenches, and they seemed sort of built with that. Like we're going to be really tough and like grind out wins. That's not really Georgia Southern, right?
No,
Georgia Southern's kind of like we're going to force a turnover, and then we're going to spread you out and hope we score enough to be okay, which is a way different like mindset than what ULM has. So I do think from that perspective that fits JMU better. I also Georgia Southern that 2022 game gave me nightmares, and then I went back and looked at the 2023 stats. Signetti and Co. adjusted pretty darn well. Like Davis Brin averaged like 5 yards a pass attempt last year, took a bunch of sacks, and I think they threw 3 picks as a team. One of them was JC French. So like 2022, Georgia Southern got theirs. Signetti and the staff went to work in the offseason, like, let's come up with a better plan and just demolish them. And I think Chesney and company on a mini buy, they're going to have a good plan here. I don't think Georgia Southern's on the same tier as JMU. I don't even think they're on the same tier as like Louisiana and Texas State, to be honest with you.
I think the mini buy plays such a massive role in this game because Lyle Hemphill is a power 5 coordinator. He's a power 4 coordinator. And on a mini buy, this man's going to be in the lab, and he's already shown some wildly disgusting disguises, wild coverages, wild fake blitzes, real blitzes. I can only imagine what maybe I'm going way too armchair psychologist here, but like going up against Clay Helton to really plant your flag and like, I just shut down what is supposed to be one of the better offenses in the Sun Belt. I think Lyle Hemphill is going to put together a masterful game plan and will slow, not stop, this Georgia Southern offense. The spread is 10 points. What do you like?
I'd probably, I don't know. I'm a little scared of it. Maybe Georgia Southern plus 10 would be my lean because I think it's got a chance to be a little bit messier than some of JMU's other games. The thing, though, that does give me some hope, I know Delvin was talking about how he thought JMU's running game could be really good, in part because of what Genty did. I think it's more so for me what Gaines, Boise State's backup running back, did, who runs a little bit like Petaway, in my opinion. So Genty cooked them. Gaines had 12 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown as a backup. They ran for like 400 yards in that game. So, like, yes, Genty's a Heisman winner, but like, Gaines isn't winning a Heisman this year, and he looked like he should have against Georgia Southern. So that gives me a little bit of hope too, because I think Petaway could have a huge game, not because he's necessarily like Ashton Genty, I'm going to be a first-round NFL draft pick, but because like Petaway's probably going to be a P4 roster next year. He looks a whole lot like Gaines in terms of his running style. Like, he hasn't gone over 100 yards yet this year. He might only need like 8 carries to go for 100 yards. I could see them crushing them in the running game. I think JMU has more answers on both sides of the ball than Georgia Southern does. So I feel like they should win. I'm just getting a little antsy about some of these like weird performances where they either blow somebody out by like 30 or they lose to ULM or barely beat Gardner Webb. Like I want a little more in between.
You want some more meat in your sandwich?
Yeah.
I agree. I would be on leaning Georgia Southern plus 10. Last time I checked, 93% of the money was on JMU to cover.
Really?
Per DraftKings as of yesterday around noon.
Interesting. I do think JMU's the better team. I feel like Georgia Southern this year has been very good at like stealing results. Like Boise State, I thought outplayed them for a lot of that game. They still had a fourth quarter lead somehow. Nevada had like 200 more yards than Georgia Southern did, which is maybe a little alarming for Georgia Southern. They still won that game on the road despite only having like 280 yards of offense. Marshall game, they obviously stole. So that's what scares me a little bit, is that gives me some of those ULM vibes where it's like they're finding ways to win, even though I don't think they're great.
I think they have a good enough offense to like steal games. Like your defense late in the game, maybe JMU up 14, defense forces a weird turnover, a break goes their way, and you blink of an eye, and all of a sudden 3 plays later, Georgia Southern scored, and it's a 7-point game with 4 minutes left. You go 3 and out, and their offense is back on the field. Like, very much that type of vibe in this game.
Yeah, I wonder if Jamie, you mentioned the special teams battle. I wonder if they can block a punt or something. Spence was going to block one against Coastal until the punter saw it, juked him, and then punted.
That was nice.
That was a nice move.
Like, that was
because that punt was blocked like before he would have dropped it on his foot.
I think Ymir Knight's going to return one for a touchdown.
He was returning it great. Petaway had a nice kick. Yeah, I mean, the special teams is, I think they're third most efficient in the country, according to ESPN's metrics. So they've been phenomenal. Defense is playing well. I also think the other thing is we're talking about like how it could be a missed opportunity for JMU if it doesn't go their way. If it does go JMU's way, they then play Southern Miss, which is so bad, like so bad at football, on the 26th. Then you get a bye week. And then you play Georgia State, which is not so bad, but like they're not good.
It's also at
Both
home.
both those at home. So there's a pretty good chance then that you would be 4-1 in Sun Belt play going into November 16th. Like, that's sick. So if you get this one, I think you're 4-1 in mid-November going to the ODU game in conference play. And then what are they? That would be 8-1 overall. Like, this is a big one. If you get it, man, you're probably in great position going into the stretch run where you then are in the fringe of college football playoff contention because there might be some chaos elsewhere and you need it with Boise State, Army, Navy, Tulane, all these other teams playing pretty well. But it's right there for the taking. You get this one and you could be out and running with the East.
Yeah, it sets up well because that last 3-game stretch is tough. At ODU coming off of a bye, at App State coming off of a bye. Hopes all the well wishes with Boone, North Carolina. Not sure where that game will be played, so that adds another wrinkle to it all. It might not even be played at App State. Who knows? And then you're finishing the year off with Marshall, who by the time that game rolls around will probably be like on life support, but
it's quite possible.
Could be without their coach. Like, very well, Charles Huff might be fired by that point.
Yeah, that one's going to be, we'll see what's going on with Marshall there. They could, so maybe it doesn't end up being too tough, but I think like the ODU and App State thing, if either of those teams,
tough,
yeah, and especially if either team can get like a couple of wins together and make a bowl push, I think they'll really be going hard to like get that bowl game and throw JMU out of the East race. There'll be some rivalry there too, both on the road, emotional 2 weeks in a row. That's not easy.
All right. You want to take it to listener questions, which we forgot about last week?
Yes, let's not forget.
All right. First off is Daniel Merriman. Is this year's young core better than last year's freshman and sophomore contingent?
Trying to remember who the freshmen and sophomores were.
Well, it'd be
Pons,
the sophomores
obviously, right?
Yeah.
Pons leaving is tough because that guy, I think Pons is probably better than any freshman or sophomore in this year's team.
Probably.
You could put Petaway as a redshirt sophomore, I guess, in the conversation.
And Alonzo Barnett.
Yeah.
I think this year's overall has better talent with their young core. However, they had a bigger star last year.
I think that's fair. They're also like playing them more. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly, but like some of these youngsters have been really good. Like Dylan Williams just comes in and randomly catches touchdowns. They just give him like, oh yeah, we'll stick him in the red zone.
High leverage moment. Let's bring in the true freshman.
Chase Reagan, every time they punt it, is like, oh cool, he downed it to 2. Like it seems like every time. And I thought the Coastal game was funny where he downed it at like the 3 and then like knocked it to himself at the 1. It was like, I got it at the 1. Like, I love this guy. Who else? JC Evans playing is weird, but also cool.
Yeah, but
are they burning his red shirt? What are they doing?
I mean, he still has 2 games. He could still play up to 2 games.
Why are you working in a package for a guy you might not have in like this whole title game though? Unless they're going to save him for like that and the other package and like against App State or something crazy.
But honestly, his packages aren't that intense. It's JC run right, JC run left on QB.
That's true. It's not like you have to like really prep for it.
It's not like, all right, guys, we're going to do this crazy quarterback draw that's going to involve a pulling guard and a pushing tackle and whatever. It's like, no, JC gets snap.
They got to have a pass out of this, though. It's pretty predictable.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're setting up. Lull you to sleep with the jab, right jab, right, jab, jab, jab. And when you least expect it, boom, uppercut.
Yeah, I would say that this year, is, I think you summed that up well, where Pond's probably the bigger star. But guys like Riley Robel have been phenomenal redshirt freshmen who looked banged up. That's another thing. We didn't get to that. Just a quick injury thing. Okay, so Carter Sweezy was it reportedly in a boot?
Yes.
And had a scooter.
Yep.
And he's listed as the starting left guard, so that seems unlikely.
Well, 2 deeps don't really matter that much, so.
so we've got, he might be out for a while. Well, he probably will be, right? Otherwise, the scooter would be weird if he would just like roll his ankle. Robel was limping to the locker room and like did not look great. Was
had like the help of 2 trainers.
Yeah. That didn't look good. Who else we got? Tyshawn Wyatt's still not on the 2 deep, like probably not playing this year, would be my guess. Io Adey, running back, still not on the 2 deep. That's not great.
No way Ruelas.
Yeah, No Way was hurt. was dressed, but he did not play,
I don't
which
think he
is
even did. I
noticeable.
don't think he even went through warmups.
No, he didn't. And then I think like Max
Chauncey Logan only played half. Sorry, but
yes.
and then Chauncey only played like half of the series. Was on a
Yeah,
bike when he wasn't playing. So, is he 100%?
there's a lot of questions. And like with like Noe, for example, Max Lipinski came in and was great. It's a lot easier to make a 35-yard field goal when you're up 30 at home than it would be like to tie the game at App. I'd prefer the old guy, Ruelas, kicking that. So that's like we'll see what happens there. I think Lipinski's got a really nice future though. Am I missing any injuries?
I feel like there was another. No, it was Robel who went down. Pfeiffer, did Pfeiffer get hurt in the game? Wasn't there another tight
Kyle,
end?
Logan Kyle. Logan
Logan
Kyle,
Kyle got
yes.
hurt.
Logan Kyle played one play. I think he might have had a catch on it, so he had like the highest PFF grade on the team, and then limped off. And then on the sideline reporting was saying that he had like a cut on his leg, but that wouldn't really explain a limp. So and then he didn't come back. So if it was a cut, you would have thought they would have just like, put a band-aid or something larger, some sort of bandage. Probably not like a small band-aid, but something to cover it up, and he would have been good to go. But I don't think he would have limped that much if it was just like a cut, because that shouldn't affect how you walk.
So that's an injury to monitor as well. So a lot of injuries.
Yeah, that's a little concerning.
Especially when Robel's like your best swing guy.
Yeah, Toner came in and played awesome. I assume he'll start at left guard. But I think the part of the reason they were playing so well is some of the rotating was working well. So if like it sucks for Toner, who was gassed at the end of the game, where it's like it could have been him rotating with Riley Robel. Instead, it's just like go, go. It's all you, man. So we'll see what they do at offensive line, because they're getting some concerning injuries along the O line.
Yes. All right. Next question. Justin Reed. A win Saturday moves JMU to 2-1 in conference play, since they'll have the tiebreaker over Georgia Southern. And they'll also would have the win. That's how they would move to 2-1. Is there another team? Sorry, that was so rude. Is there another team the rest of the season that could be a threat to dethrone JMU, or can this Saturday cement them as the East rep for the championship?
Let me look at the conference standings.
I'm going to say, while you do that, there's not really a threat for anyone to dethrone JMU in the East. The biggest threat to JMU not winning the East, if they win Saturday, which is a big if, would be themselves. Like, they've shown that they've shot themselves in the foot with the ULM game. If you win against Georgia Southern, you kind of just have to avoid beating yourself for the rest of the season, because I don't think App has the capability to beat you. It is a rivalry, like a budding rivalry at the FBS level. That could provide some oomph behind it for that. ODU's kind of this budding rival as well, even though JMU's kind of dominated them since moving up to the FBS level. That could maybe do something, but it's not like anyone. The only way they would be dethroned is if they just lose a game they should win.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I guess the one team in this scenario that you would look at would be Marshall, probably.
But
I
they're
guess
a dumpster fire, man.
they had that game in their grasp, so
And
maybe
they lost.
maybe they turn around and make some stuff happen. But everyone right now has, so it's Georgia Southern's 2-0, JMU's 1-1, Coastal's 1-1, Marshall's 1-1, ODU's 1-1, Georgia State's 0-2, and App's 0-3. So like App's dead. Georgia State, I think, is probably dead. ODU, I just don't think has like enough to. They could be frisky. It would be shocking if that team won the East.
Worth noting, Jason Henderson, their all-world linebacker, will redshirt this season, so he won't be playing for the rest of the year. You didn't know
Really?
this?
I hadn't seen that. That's
You didn't see that?
disappointing to see. Was he injured?
He had only played one game this season.
So he must.
Yes, sorry, I should say he's injured. He's not, as of right now, not planning to transfer.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot.
I was about to be like, after all the stat keepers have done for him.
I forgot that in this world, yes, he got injured in the South Carolina game.
Okay.
Only had like 5 tackles. I think he only played like a quarter or maybe a half against South Carolina.
Probably means he had like 2 tackles.
All right. Well, that was at USC, remember that.
All right, my mistake.
But he got injured in that game, hasn't played, and Ricky Ronnie announced earlier this week that Jason Henderson will redshirt this season and be back next year after recovering from his injury.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe Marshall, just because they haven't lost head-to-head in this scenario, if JMU beats Georgia Southern and Coastal. But I don't know. I think, like, everyone in the East, if JMU wins this game, I think every other team in the East is going to lose at least 2 conference games this year. So that would give JMU a chance to maybe even lose one more and still be okay.
Yeah. JMU _71. Will this week be the first shootout involving the Dukes? Why or why not? Do you think the Dukes win in a shootout this week?
I would say that JMU UNC would qualify as a shootout in my
I,
book.
I wouldn't. It was a 20-point win.
70 to 50 is not a shootout.
No, because it was a 20-point win. I consider a shootout like 42-35.
No, a shootout is a lot of points.
I think a shootout's a lot of points and close.
I would just say it's a lot of points. I thought
Okay.
70. I thought that was shootout-y to me. But no, I don't think this will be a shootout. I don't think
Okay.
Georgia Southern's offense is that good.
Okay.
Well, how many points is a shootout for you?
I would say
Tell
like
me your shootout.
42-35 would be a shootout.
I don't think we'll get that high.
35. What would you qualify 35-28 as a shootout?
No.
Okay.
I think you got to have at least one team in the 40. You got to have a combined over 70, but I think one of the teams has to hit 40.
Well, these are a lot of qualifiers. All right, so you say no. I think it's going to be a back and forth, really good game where Georgia Southern covers the 10-point spread.
Okay.
Which team will show up Saturday? This is from Randy W. Hunter.
Hopefully both of them on time. Kick off at 4. And I'm going to say it's the good one.
I think it's a good one too. It's a day game, so we don't have to worry about anything. All of their bad performances have been at night.
I also think ULM is just built in a way where they were able to muck it up, and I don't think Georgia Southern can muck it up quite as well because they can't stop the run. Like JMU was like, oh, we're not winning our one-on-one battles on offense. I don't think that'll be as much of a problem against Georgia Southern.
I agree. I think the good team will show up and they'll be able to put up some points. And I think defensively, no one has scored more than 2 touchdowns against this defense at the group of 5 or FCS levels. And I don't really know if, I think if JMU scores 28, they probably win this game with JMU's defense.
Yeah, the defense is playing better than they're maybe even getting credit for.
Not with me. I'm all over that defense.
You're all in, yeah.
I've been all in. Eric, curious why Dylan Morris. This was interesting. Curious why Dylan Morris didn't get any snaps even in the fourth quarter last week. Did he redshirt again to preserve his last year of eligibility? I don't think so. Can I say?
I don't think you can, right? He's already redshirted.
He would need a medical redshirt
unless he's injured that we don't know about. Sure.
Can I workshop a take with you here live on the podcast? And by live, I mean on the recording that everyone's listening to after we post this.
Yes.
Maybe I'm armchair psychologizing Dylan Morris a little bit too much, but it seems like maybe he's kind of like the elder statesman of the room. He gave that awesome play in the Charlotte game to break things open in the second half. Like he's kind of a team player in that way. Not kind of, he is a team player in that way where he was willing after being beaten out in fall camp to be like, yo, this play's going to work. Alonza, execute it. You're going to kill it. Go out and do your thing. Do you think he's just like, I'm an old man. I don't want mop up time. Like, hey, young kids who never play, like go in there and have some fun.
Feels like he's almost like a player coach at this point.
Yeah.
Like
I think he'll come in. I think he is the second string quarterback.
I do too.
But in a game that doesn't mean anything, it's just like, I don't really feel like getting hit. Like, Billy, have fun. Blake, have fun.
And if Barnett goes down with like something serious, I would not be shocked if they're like, hey, JC, like maybe we don't redshirt and we actually do have like a package for you that we can use to go with Morris to add something in the running game. So they'll probably pull out all the stops if something like that happens. So getting the other guys reps is valuable.
Yeah. And reps are always valuable because you never know what's going to happen. John Goro, 2023 had 5 wins of 20 plus. The 2024 team already has 4. Is this team more dominant than the 2023 team? Also, how many more 20 plus wins, 20 plus point wins are left on the schedule? Funny thing, that 4 20 plus point wins does not include the FCS win because they were horrible in that game.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. More dominant. I feel like we got to go through a whole season to truly answer that. They have the makings of being, I think, a more dominant team. But like one of the reasons last year's team was quote unquote dominant is because they didn't slip up until the app game. Like they kept winning and winning and winning and had some really nice second half performances. So if JMU can have a great second half, then, certainly they could be viewed as a better team than last year's.
They already had their slip up against ULM. So
Southern Miss game is one
trap.
that stands out as a 20+ point win.
Honestly, it's kind of insane that all of their wins this year have been by 20 plus, except for Gardner Webb.
Yeah, that is wild.
Like,
I think Southern Miss could be. Georgia State off a bye could be. I'm not going to rule out any of the remaining games as a 20+ point possibility because I did not think Coastal would be 20+ and it ended up being 30+.
yeah. I'm going to save Alex's question for last because it's a fun one. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
to Will Burns. I know AB3 hasn't had a full season yet, but as of now, how would you rank the 3 JMU FBS quarterbacks, Todd Centeio, Jordan McLeod, Alonzo Barnett III, based on who you would want behind center in a close game?
Man. I think I'd pick McLeod, but my caveat would be that's because he's like experienced and seems to make a lot of good reads. Where like in 2 years, I would probably want Barnett.
Right now, my list would go right now: Jordan McLeod, Todd Centeio, Alonzo Barnett III.
Yeah, me too.
At the end of this season, very well could be AB3 jumping
I
over
would.
both of them to the
This
top.
is such an interesting question though, because I would pick if you told me like the start of a game. I think I would probably pick Barnett.
Really? I would still
Yeah,
pick McLeod.
I like McLeod a lot, but like man, Alonzo's got some. He's got some game.
Shoot, I might even pick Centeio. Like, he was fun.
Todd was good. Todd was very good.
That was very, and I feel like he's like a forgotten quarterback in JMU recent history.
If he had stayed healthy, man, and if the defense had done him any favors against Georgia Southern,
Any at all.
that guy was good.
If he didn't get injured, probably probably JMU has 3 losses because of ULM now at the FBS level in 3 seasons, which is insane.
They definitely would have beaten Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even Louisville. Like
they would have been in that game more because they couldn't throw and they still were tied at halftime. Yeah.
Shane Mulderig, are you worried about the stuttering on offense of the second half of the Coastal game?
Not really. I mean, I think they need to be more consistent, but I wouldn't say I'm worried.
Yeah, consistency is key. I think for the most part, though, like we were talking about it in the opening segment, they were just so dominant in that game defensively that I think they just were like, we have a 32-point lead.
Yeah.
They're not scoring 33 points on us in the next 30 minutes. So let's just hunker down and let's do a Kurt Signetti turtle, but the defense is actually going to show up.
It was the successful turtling.
Yeah, which JMU has not seen a lot of in recent memory.
No.
Then Alex, super fun question, Alex. Which JMU football player would be the best as a basketball player for the Dukes, and vice versa? Who would be a good football player that's currently on the basketball roster?
It's a hard question.
Okay, I got mine easy.
Okay, I haven't done any research, which makes it a little harder because, like, I'm sure there's like guys on the team who are like high school basketball stars.
Yeah.
Who you got?
Elijah Hutchins Everett at tight end. Also acceptable, Ebenezer Dewana, tight end. Let's just get a big man and put him at the tight end position. And I think Taji Hudson as like a stretch 4 or like a sharpshooter 3 would be really fun.
That's a good one. Man, that is a good pick. I feel like maybe I made this up. Was Xavier Brown like a high school quarterback? Feels like he could have been.
I'll confirm, but I don't think so.
Was he not? I swore he was a football dog.
I'm looking it up.
Where did he play in high school? He was like at
There was in his before college notes on the
they didn't put that in there, but they're I don't think they put it in for anyone. They're always putting in basketball stuff. It's like, don't you think a podcast might get a unique question? You could throw them a bone in the bios. Guess not. I'll take AJ Smith then.
Oh, he is built.
Yeah, he's 6'6", 215. Feel like you could use him a receiver or tight end, and he would be even linebacker or something. Could be an interesting player. They've got some Luke Anderson. They've got some guys who could go both ways on paper. For football, I'll take Josh Pfeiffer, 6'6", 240. Seems like a good athlete. I think he would be a good hooper.
I like
I have
it.
no idea if he was or not. Let's see if
I'm
there's
now
information
just
on that.
I now want to see who's the tallest player on the team
For basketball.
for football.
I think it's Pfeiffer, or he's tied. Or no,
It's a bunch.
hold
It's
on.
a bunch of 6'6" guys. I would love to see Lloyd Summerall running down the court.
Yeah,
He's also 6'6". There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6'6" guys. Josh Pfeiffer, Simmons, Jones, Cameron Jones, Griffin Hart, and Lloyd Summerall.
I bet Taylor Thompson could ball.
You're just using my playbook. Just pick the tight ends.
That's
Tight
what
end,
everybody
like-
does. That's the one that actually does both.
Yeah, but you got Antonio Gates. You got
Exactly.
what's his name? Mo Alley Cox, the VCU alum.
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. All right. Was that all the listener questions we had?
It seems that way.
Yes, it was. All right. Anything else you got to add?
Soccer teams are cooking.
Soccer teams are really cooking. Men's fell out of the top 25 after the heartbreaking loss to UVA. However,
Really?
I'm 99% sure.
Weren't they like 10th?
Yeah.
Who does these rankings?
The coaches, I think.
That's unbelievable.
Let me confirm because now you got me questioning it, but
Yeah, they're not mentioning it in the stories. You'd think they would. Huh. That's truly
your
unbelievable.
tone, you're like annoyed. I mean, this is bullshit.
I guess UVA's had a little bit of a rough year at times. But they got the win over Georgia Southern. I don't think, they're still undefeated in Sun Belt play. They're playing well. They got Kentucky on Saturday at home. That should be fun.
Field hockey, I don't think it's just insane the flip from last season to this season.
Yeah.
I wonder how much it is the fact that like you're in a conference now and you're actually playing for something.
I think that helps. And I think the MAC is like, you can beat up on some peeps.
They are coming off of a tough 3-2 loss in overtime at ODU, but ODU is a perennial field hockey power. So overtime loss, not what you want, but it's not like a UVA loss where they're struggling in men's soccer and men's soccer loses it. I think they lost that game on an own goal.
Yeah.
Also, shout out Ginny Lackey, maybe the best freshman in the Sun Belt, might win Sun Belt Player of the Year. Ever since entering the lineup, the JMU women's soccer offense has taken on a new vibe. They're
cruising in Sun Belt play. She's got 9 goals in 8 games. That's good.
Yeah, and it opens up everything else. Like when you have that type of star player, your whole offense can just play better. And they haven't lost in Sun Belt play.
Yep. And we are getting close to basketball season. We had preseason polls, men's second in the Sun Belt preseason coaches poll.
You want to go to men's basketball media day?
In New Orleans?
Yeah.
Is that where it is? Yeah, sure. And then women's basketball picked to win the league. So it should be a really good year in the AUBC.
If you're a business owner and you want to sponsor our trip down to New Orleans for JMU Men's Basketball Media Day down at Sunbelt Media Day, we are more than happy to shill for your business. Hit us up, JMUSportsNews@gmail.com.
I'm excited for this season.
If you're interested in sponsoring us to go down there or just advertising with us in general, we'd love to have you on board. Reach out to us, JMUSportsNews@gmail.com. All right. Anything else, Bennett?
They're coming to my neck of the woods. They're playing Towson on November 16th, a month from today, men's basketball. Everybody mark your calendars.
Woo-hoo. That's a big one.
Game, 8:00 tip, which feels a little bit absurd for a Towson game. But to each their own. All right. That's all I got.
For Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. You can find us at JMU Sports News on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And check out our home on the web at jmusportsnews.com. If you're liking the content, feel free to buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News. And be sure to like, rate, subscribe, and share wherever you find your podcasts. And on YouTube, just type in the JMU Sports News Network on there, and you'll find this podcast and To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce. New episodes of that drop every Monday. Talk to you guys next week, hopefully after a Georgia Southern dub.